again.
What we want to do tonight is start a discussion of
The blue
what
boxes.
will the district look like after we're finished.
Yeah.
And I've got two sets of slides. And this first slide is, I want to go over what are the requirements? What's the district going to have to do? And then talk a little bit about, start a conversation of what resources does the district need going forward. And you'll get to a diagram. The last slide's a diagram with boxes. We're going to concentrate on the blue boxes. So, and you have the slides if you want to look at them. So, this is a list of duties that the district will have after we affiliate. It won't be like there's nothing to do. So we're going to have to maintain board officers in compliance with RCW, with the state laws. We're going to have to assure that the bylaws, policies, and procedures are in place to meet state laws. We have to document management with the Public Records Act. And have to appoint a superintendent to oversee the affairs of the district. Superintendent. An annual budget will have to be constructed and submitted to the state and the county. There's some finance-related duties that will still go on. Collect and manage income. Well, revenue, property tax, the payments from the leases.
Yeah, which means you're building an infrastructure. For example, like right now, the way we are, you're the board.
Me, my staff.
I mean, you're and
yeah.
So post affiliation, we have to reconstruct. We're gonna have to have a accountant.
Yeah,
that we will be handling.
It's like he paid you to help him along in this presentation.
No. And you
find
things I like. Okay.
You're giving him these perfect segues. It really is like he paid you.
And when we get looking at the numbers, we won't look at numbers this session, but remember there's quite a bit of revenue, income, money flowing through. So you need some expertise, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That's what we need to reconstruct that infrastructure.
Yes.
Now, my question is, if we still need all this, which I assume we do, then we're still going to need to have a board, and we're still going to need to have committees, correct? That make sure that we follow through and make sure that things are going the way they are supposed to go, correct?
Yeah, I mean, some infrastructure. And,
obviously
that
we need.
Depends on how many staff you have and such like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of
committees.
And I suppose it also is going to depend on how we blend together with Overlake, how we work with them, because we won't be the ultimate in charge, will we? I suspect not.
Not on the operations.
Well, so this is constructed around the way the LOI is written.
Okay.
So rather than coming up with a lot of alternative scenarios, we use the way the LOI is written to construct this.
Okay.
And in the LOI, all operations of the hospital are under Overlake.
That's what I thought.
And so this board would then be overseeing the district. So which is these are the list of responsibilities.
For the district,
so you would,
yeah.
So in regard to the hospital, you would be landlords.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right up there where it says manage income, I'll just throw out some numbers just so you see how big this is. Property taxes, about 3.8, 3.9 million. It's a lot of money. The lease, if you look at what's Overlake most likely going to lease the facility for, is probably about 2.9 million per year. You add those up, you're over 6 million. Big number. And then you'll have, some investments right now we have unrestricted cash of right around $6 million. So you don't want just that sitting in a coffee can off to the side and invested in safe investments that comply with state law. There our state regulations on what we can invest in. Submission of appropriate reports. We've got surface water management fees, reports to the state auditor's office and such that have to be done. Adherent to all of the payment schedules on the bonds. We have to make monthly payments on the tax-based bond. The county does that, but we make monthly payments on the revenue bond. So you got to monitor the county on their LTGO, tax-based bond payments. Manage the bond covenants and the relationship with bondholders. We have and will continue to have, after the hospital, certain financial targets we need to meet. And we have about 5 major bondholders that we now report to every quarter. We have a bond investor call with them. How we're doing financially. They're very interested in the affiliation, but there's some of that to work with the bondholders and keep them informed on what's going on, because they have a big stake in this place. When we issued the revenue bonds, I told Kim and Tom, who was our CEO, I said, it's like we got owners now. You know, I thought about that. We do. We have owners, like you have stockholders. And then we need to sponsor and fund external audits. We still will need, most likely, a CPA coming. There are some control issues we might want to have looked at by outside firms. So there's another slide of this too, so it doesn't stop.
It's quite a bit of,
Could you go back to the previous slide?
Sure, go ahead.
And that is with respect to the with respect to the revenue bonds, those will be paid off by revenue.
Revenue?
Yes.
All right. Now how does this work? Where they're in charge of operations, and they're going to be receiving revenue for their for services. Is that right? And how do we get that to retire our revenue bonds?
There's a lease in place.
Yeah.
So that lease says Overlake will pay you X amount of money, and that has to be at least 5% over the revenue bond payments. So Overlake pays the district district then pays the bondholders through various ways. I mean, it's not like you sit down and write out a check. There's things you can set up, but that has to be the flow of funds. And that bond payment is it's about $2.8 million a year. So that'll flow through.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, it seems to me this is going to be a big deal. And I mean, when you're talking this much money and a board that trusts you, Steve, impeccably to take care of stuff, and Jim and your team, now all of a sudden we're going to have to be able to hold somebody else accountable and understand how to do that. Understand what are the appropriate questions. What do we need to know to be diligent in the job that we have? And that's not going to be an easy transition, or at least I don't think it's going to be. I don't know how Emma or Commissioner Pollard feels, but
it's going to be very complex.
it will be, and
I
you're
think
building
so,
almost a different corporate here.
Which
This is a corporate for us, and then there is the other side
Which
of it.
is
It's
exactly
real.
why we think it's really important that we spend time in these work studies talking about it. We have our work studies that are for affiliation, but these work studies that are
and
about
this is the
building for after affiliation.
right.
Because it's so important that it shouldn't wait till the last minute.
no, it should.
But these, having insight into what this needs to be, will be insight into what it's going to take as far as resources to keep it going. Because I think that information is going to be necessary to have the affiliation agreement conversations and to put some wisdom into those that development.
I think too, it took me probably 2 years to start to get the hang. Some stuff was easy because we own a business and accounts receivable, accounts payable, but it takes a while to feel comfortable knowing what you're doing and what your
When you're
responsibilities are.
constructing a whole new
And now we're
system.
going from something we're all three, and I'm sure the whole board's comfortable doing, to something where it's pretty tenuous. We're not sure.
Okay. So
What?
This
as we
is
keep
where,
going, Steve's good. Steve's put together the required skill sets.
Okay.
We concur.
Tonight's
yeah, the
meeting,
required skills.
I wouldn't expect a final answer to come out, but this is kind of setting the stage and saying, okay, here's what we need to think about in the next few months going forward. We'll have more sessions on this.
Yes.
Frankly, I would feel a lot more relaxed if Steve Daniel were staying full-time. You know.
I'm sitting in the same spot Commissioner Pollard is.
Okay.
I really am.
I am not the only one that can do this.
I know.
I like doing it, but okay. Okay, then there's HR policies. There'd be some, we probably have some staff, so have to have some benefits in
That's right.
place,
Mhm.
and
Those things are-
pay wages and such. There's business and real estate duties. You need insurance. Property and general liability insurance, directors and officers coverage, possibly tail coverage for prior acts, depending on the agreement, and then a surety bond if you employ a treasurer. Asset management, you got the East Campus, have to manage that. Maintain contracts for legal advice on real estate. You'll need legal advice, and you have to have a resource for that. There's a slide on that later on. Maintain a small works roster and oversee bidding process. Probably a little bit of that to go on. Compliance with the obligations of the affiliation agreement. And that's not defined yet, but there will be obligations there that the district has to Overlake and to the public within that. Financial operation and such. Again, we don't know what they're going to be. We have an idea, but we don't know. Other items that we've heard you talk about would be collaborate with other community service organizations in addressing the social determinants of working on health-based issues for this community. Still a public hospital district, and there's still more to do in areas such as Gene Pollard sends me stuff on opioid crisis, homeless, youth obesity, all of those type of issues. Something you might want to get into.
And you know, some of those issues, we do have other entities in the community that are really concerned about that. This may be where we might partner and say, what information do you have? How can we help? And become stronger as a unit with somebody that's already started that process.
Maybe create a hub within our community with the rest of the service providers and other community organizations. And then there is a big, several different King County funding that is geared towards many of these issues, just the homelessness, youth obesity, that is being awarded to those hubs, to those partners that are within the organization. So that might be another issue that we can work on.
Reading the last paragraph, it says identified through a solution, like I think what is meant is a process, like a community needs assessment. And that just is given as an example. The fact is, under law, we are required to do a community needs assessment, health needs assessment every 2 years. And one of the things that worries me is we're behind on that process. And I do not think that we should depend on Overlake to do that process for our community. I know it's a nice thought that they would pay for the consultant and so forth, but
the last one was 2016, I believe. So yeah.
So our intention was not to kind of get bogged down on this last one, but to kind of put it in perspective that while we often talk about all the things that without the obligations and responsibilities associated with the hospital and clinic system, we'd be freed to do other things. But recognizing this is the third slide now of all the things that as a public hospital district still obligated to do, and so that's we're trying to keep that all in perspective.
We're talking out loud sometimes.
No, it's fine, it's fine, no, it's fine.
I'm talking out loud.
We
I
do the same thing.
Oh, there's so much,
That's how we
so
know,
many
we
things
do
to do.
exactly the same thing when we're sitting and having conversations, and so we have to draw ourselves back to say, wait, we've gotta figure out what this what the reality on the
Yeah.
ground looks like.
Sorry. Just that last section is kind of what I wanna do, the other is, above is kind of like I do. So.
Well, community needs assessment needs to be above the line then, because it's required by law.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Good point, good point.
Can we move?
yeah.
Now, boxes. What I want to talk about tonight in discussion, we probably won't get it all completed, is, okay, board functions, what does that relate to in what staff? Probably have to hire some people. And how many staff are required?
Yeah.
Discussions on that. We won't come to a decision on it, but let's start a discussion. What are staff qualifications? If you have people doing this stuff, what kind of qualifications do you have? I have another set of slides where this is not the answer. It would be kind of to start conversation, throwing out ideas. It's the best, because it's always good to say, okay, what do you mean? I'll show you what I mean. And then outsourced functions. There are some functions, such as a CPA audit, legal and such, that will have to be outsourced. The white boxes are, once you get those blue boxes figured out in a few meetings, then that's a fancy way of saying we will actually build a budget. We know what our revenue is. We'll have various costs. I can do costs of insurance and all those required things. And say, what does that look like? We know what our revenue inflows will be from taxes. We have a good idea from the lease of the facility. What do that do? So we can build a budget and say, what do we want to do? And then we build a budget. We then have the whole other area of, we're talking to Overlake, there's some negotiation that will come in with what do we do with our existing cash and what happens to tax revenue above debt service. So those are going to be part of the negotiation.